On my 67th birthday, I sent 6 simple words to the family group chat. I miss you guys so much. Hours passed without a single reply. Then my daughter-in-law texted, "We're on vacation. Don't be so dramatic." That was the moment I opened my banking app and changed everything. A single sentence can change everything I thought as I stared at my phone. On my 67th birthday, at 8 in the morning, I typed 6 simple words into the family group chat. I miss you guys so much. It wasn't a guilt trip, just a quiet greeting on my special day sent into the digital void. Hours passed, and absolutely nothing happened. No emojis, no quick reactions, just the cold, gray check marks showing the message had been read. It wasn't until late afternoon that a private text from my daughter-in-law, Brooke, lit up my screen. "We're on vacation. Don't be so dramatic," it read, spelled out in cold, flawless letters. My son Ethan seemed to silently go along with it since I didn't hear a single word from him all day. I carefully set the phone down on the kitchen table, finished my coffee, and felt a deep, liberating sense of clarity wash over me. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the definitive result of years of creeping disrespect that I had tolerated for far too long. Since my husband passed away, I had let them have the spacious main floor of the house while I moved into the small apartment above the garage. On top of that, the joint account used to cover the property taxes, insurance, and utilities had remained solely in my name for years. I had left it that way out of pure habit and to give the young family a financial leg up. But you can't buy respect. You have to claim it. I opened the banking app on my tablet, calmly tapped the account settings, and revoked their debit card access with a few clicks. Effective immediately, the account was locked to outside users. It wasn't a petty act of revenge, just a long overdue clean break of our finances. Then I sat by the window and waited for the inevitable storm. The silence lasted exactly until Brooke tried to pay for gas at a station near their resort. Within 20 minutes, my phone was vibrating nonstop against the wooden kitchen table. 37 missed calls eventually lit up the display, a blinking flood of sudden attention and pure panic. Ethan tried 3 times and Brooke dialed my number minute after minute as if her life depended on it. I intentionally ignored the constant ringing, calmly watered the geraniums on my porch, and made myself dinner. It was almost midnight when Ethan finally sent a blunt text. "What did you do?" "The card isn't working. This is incredibly embarrassing." Not a single word about my birthday. No apology for his wife's harsh message, just absolute focus on the frozen funds. I typed a short, matter-of-fact reply. "I changed the access permissions. We'll sort it out calmly when you get back." After that, I turned the phone completely off and slept more soundly than I had in months. The next morning, the air in the house felt remarkably light and clean. The sun streamed through the pristine windows, and that familiar weight of constant expectation was gone. I knew exactly that this step was the beginning of a massive shift, but I felt ready for it. My years of playing the quiet provider, paying for everything, and keeping the peace in the background officially ended with that single click. If someone only notices your value, when your wallet closes, they missed the point a long time ago. I grabbed my tote bag for my daily walk to the local market. 2 days later, I heard their heavy SUV pull into the gravel driveway. The car doors slammed shut with a thud, a dead giveaway for the tense mood of the returning travelers. Moments later, I heard heavy, forceful footsteps coming up the wooden stairs to my apartment. Brooke didn't even wait for me to fully open the door. She pushed her way right into my small entryway. "What is this childish game, Eleanor?" she snapped while Ethan stood behind her with his head down. "We could barely pay for the rental car in cash because you locked us out of the account." I stood calmly in the doorway, keeping my arms relaxed and my voice low. The account is in my name, Brooke, and I need those funds for my own expenses moving forward, I said quietly. Ethan caught my eye for a second, but quickly looked away the way he always did when things got uncomfortable. Mom doing that in the middle of our trip was completely uncalled for, he muttered weakly. Brooke immediately demanded the new login info, pointing out that the quarterly property tax bill was due next week. I gave a faint smile, shook my head, and pulled a prepared binder from the shelf. Inside, I had neatly categorized and separated the utility bills from the past few years. Starting next month, everyone pays their own share directly to the city, I explained, half factually. Brooke snorted in disbelief, threatening that they would no longer pick up my groceries on weekends. It was meant to intimidate me, but it didn't faze me at all. I preferred doing my own shopping anyway. She turned on her heel and yanked Ethan by the sleeve back down to their apartment. The days that followed were defined by an icy, calculated silence throughout the property. Nobody said hello in the driveway, and my grandkids were noticeably kept away from me. Brooke was trying to punish me with the silent treatment, but her strategy completely missed the mark. On Saturday morning, I went down to the shared laundry room in the basement and found my usual spot blocked. Brooke's mountains of laundry were intentionally piled on top of my washing machine, and my appliance had been unplugged. I didn't make a scene. I just carried my basket back upstairs to my apartment. Instead of starting an argument, I called a local contractor I've known for years. By Monday morning, his van was parked in the driveway to install a dedicated washer-dryer hookup right in my upstairs bathroom. When Ethan came home from work and saw the service truck, he marched right up the stairs. "What's going on? This is a total waste of money. We have plenty of room downstairs," he said, clearly irritated. "There's no room left for my things downstairs, Ethan," I replied as the plumber ran the new lines. I paid the $1,200 invoice in cash on the spot, without asking them for a single dime. Brooke stood out in the yard, watching the whole thing with a dark scowl through the kitchen window. She was slowly realizing that her petty jabs weren't provoking an emotional breakdown, they were triggering permanent structural changes. I was reclaiming my space piece by piece, reducing our daily interactions to zero. My independence was worth every single dollar these small upgrades cost. The next flashpoint didn't take long to surface, and this time, it was about the shared car. My old sedan usually sat in the garage since I rarely drove long distances anymore. Ethan and Brooke had grown accustomed to taking it for large grocery runs or weekend trips without even asking. On Tuesday, when I needed to drive to a doctor's appointment, the car keys weren't hanging on the peg by the door. I walked downstairs, knocked on their door, and Brooke opened it in her loungewear. "Ethan took your car to work today. His truck is at the mechanic," she said casually, looking past me. "I wrote that appointment on the kitchen calendar a week ago," I reminded her calmly. "Well, we forgot. Just call an Uber," she said, starting to close the door. I didn't try to hold it open. I walked back up to my apartment and called a local cab. The fare was steep, but the ride gave me plenty of time to make a final decision. After my appointment, I had the taxi drop me off directly at the local dealership and signed the paperwork to sell the vehicle. They offered me a fair trade-in price of $8,500 and sent a flatbed to pick it up that very afternoon. When Ethan got home and saw the empty garage spot, he stormed upstairs completely blindsided. "Where's the car, Mom? I have to drive out to a client first thing tomorrow morning," he yelled. "I sold it. I don't drive enough to justify keeping it anymore," I replied, sipping my tea. He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, then walked out without another word. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. AI tools may help with parts of our workflow, but every story is carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these family stories, Please consider supporting the channel with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. Ko-fi, https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal.me/Kan Your support means more than you know. Losing access to the car hit them much harder than they would ever admit. Brooke now had to coordinate carpools or ride the transit system to get the kids to soccer practice, which completely threw off her rigid schedule. The power dynamic in the house had completely flipped within a matter of weeks, all without a single shouting match. They were finally learning the hard way that my quiet, invisible labor had been the backbone of their comfortable lifestyle. Over the weekend, they hosted a large backyard barbecue for their friends and neighbors. In the past, I would have spent days in the kitchen preparing side dishes, marinating meat, and cleaning up afterward. This time, I bought a new novel, packed a blanket, and took the bus out to the nearby state park. I spent the entire afternoon sitting in the warm sun, reading and soaking in the absolute peace away from the noise. When I got back that evening, the party was over, and the downstairs kitchen looked like a disaster zone. Brooke was standing over a sink full of dishes, looking exhausted, while Ethan sat slumped at the table, staring at his phone. "You could have at least helped us with the potato salad, Eleanor," Brooke said bitterly as I walked past. "I wasn't invited. Brooke and I had other plans today," I replied with a polite but distant smile. I went upstairs, locked my door, and enjoyed the quiet comfort of my clean space. The guilt they tried so hard to project simply couldn't find a place to land anymore. One Thursday evening, there was an unfamiliar, hesitant knock at my door. Ethan was standing there by himself, holding 2 mugs of hot tea, looking incredibly tired. "Can we talk for a minute, Mom?" he asked, using the warm name he hadn't used in ages. I invited him in, and we sat at the small dining table by the window as he set the mugs down. Brooke and I. We're barely keeping our heads above water with the bills and the kids' schedules right now. He began carefully. He proposed that we reactivate the joint account, and in exchange, they would involve me more in their daily lives. We could start doing family dinners on weekends again, and you'd get to see the grandkids more often, he offered. It was a transparent attempt to restore the old convenient setup under the guise of family bonding. I took a sip of my tea, looked my son dead in the eye, and felt no anger, only a mild sense of pity. "Ethan, you don't want me in your daily life. You just want your financial cushion and your free help back," I said openly. He looked down at his lap, knowing I had seen right through his pitch. "The joint account is gone for good, and the expenses for this property will be split strictly by square footage from now on," I added. He didn't even try to argue. He finished his tea in silence and left a few minutes later. The leverage they thought they had simply didn't exist anymore because I had taken it away. After that failed conversation, it became crystal clear that living under the same roof had no future. The constant proximity created a heavy, uncomfortable tension that I had no desire to live with at this stage of my life. I quietly started looking at small, low-maintenance townhouses in a quiet neighborhood a few miles away. Since the property had been left to both Ethan and me in equal shares after my husband's passing, I was well within my rights to make a move. I quickly found a charming, single-story place near a walking trail that was perfect for my needs. I signed the paperwork at the escrow office and covered the down payment entirely from my personal savings. Only when everything was legally locked in did I lay the official buyout documents on the kitchen table in front of Ethan. "I'm selling my half of the property, Ethan. You have 90 days to secure a loan to buy me out, or we'll have to put the whole house on the market," I said. Brooke, who had walked into the room, went pale, completely losing her usual icy composure. "You can't do this. Where are we supposed to get that kind of financing on such short notice?" she cried out, panicked. "That's for you two to figure out with your bank. I'm moving into my new place," I replied, evenly. In that moment, the reality hit them. Their disrespect had finally pushed me completely out of their lives. No dramatic legal battles, no screaming matches, just the natural consequence of years of emotional coldness and exploitation. The next 3 months flew by in a blur of frantic bank appointments downstairs and packing tape upstairs. Ethan had to take out a hefty mortgage to pay out my $180,000 share of the Equitia move that would permanently tighten their budget for years to come. I packed my boxes entirely on my own, deliberately declining any offers of help, using the time to declutter and leave old emotional baggage behind. The moving truck arrived on a crisp, clear Tuesday morning, and the movers worked quickly and efficiently. Ethan stood by the mailbox watching the boxes get loaded, looking smaller and more reflective than I had ever seen him. Brooke didn't show her face once the entire morning. She stayed firmly behind the closed curtains of the main floor. When the truck was finally loaded, I walked over to Ethan one last time to say goodbye. "I wish you guys the best with the house, Ethan," I said, offering my hand. He took it hesitantly, held it for a second, and whispered, "I'm so sorry for how things turned out, Mom." "I'm not, Ethan. This was exactly what needed to happen for all of us to finally have some clarity," I replied gently. I got into my car, didn't look back in the rearview mirror once, and felt a profound sense of relief lift off my chest. The old burden was gone, and the road ahead was wide open, clean, and entirely mine. My new townhouse was smaller, but it belonged entirely to me, and it fit my life perfectly. The rooms were filled with natural light, the neighbors gave a friendly wave when checking the mail, and the nearby park became my favorite spot for afternoon walks. My phone now sat on the entryway console for hours without me checking it anxiously, freed from the constant dread of an incoming text. Ethan started calling about once a month this time, entirely on his own initiative, and his tone was noticeably more respectful. We talked about the weather, how the kids were doing in school, and casual updates, but the old dynamic of emotional manipulation was completely dead. Brooke never reached out at all, which I considered a massive win for my mental health and daily tranquility. Sometimes my mind drifted back to that birthday, to those 6 words in the group chat, and the freezing cold reply sent from their vacation. Back then, it felt like a crushing heartbreak, but now I recognized it as the ultimate wake-up call. Sometimes you have to be completely ignored to realize you're standing in the wrong place and that it's time to walk away. I sat out on my new patio, took a sip of my tea, and embraced the beautiful, hard-won silence of the late afternoon. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't caused a scene. I had simply quietly stepped out of their reach. And it was without a doubt the best decision I had ever made. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. AI tools may help with parts of our workflow, but every story is carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these family stories, please consider supporting the channel with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family, co-FE, https://co-fi.com/The Story Family, PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPal me/Con Hoang Min. Your support means more than you know.